These were all really good, high-rating programmes produced regionally.
They had a gardening programme and a fishing programme, and then somehow they brought it all in together to be ATV Today.
There was certainly the impression in Birmingham that we were very much second best, and that Elstree had everything.
It was rat infested.
It really was.
Because it had been a ballroom and a cinema, the West End, and of course it was by the canals. So once they started emptying and knocking the building down,
all the
rats had nowhere to go.
Anything could go wrong, and if anything went wrong, it was the announcer who got the job of putting it right again.
When the audiences came in, we used to love watching them come in, because they walked down that long corridor into the studio, I can't remember the number, 1 or 2, and they turned left into the studio, and they're looking at pictures of Adam Chance and Jane and Noel and Benny, all and the stars that they'd made as well, Boone. They were all there, and they used to come in and look at, and then suddenly see Jane Rossington walking out of the dressing room. I mean,
slowly we got the sets really tuned in to how we could work. Our sets were, as I say, like theatre sets, so they were flats, so they did shake. If you leaned against them or something, or somebody knocked them, they went blah, 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 just like a theatre set.
And she turned up at the cathedral, dolled up to the nines with all the furs and the jewellery and everything else, and she was told to don't sit in the front, don't sit on the side, go up to the back of there. She got very upset about it, actually. But the storyline was she was broke at the time, and suddenly she appeared all dolled to the nines, silly old bugger. Nice lady, though. Great fun.
And I do remember he'd come round once a year. We'd all be prepared for this because he'd come and see the show and everything. He'd arrive on the studio floor, quite a tiny guy really, but with a cigar, even though it said no smoking in the studio, he had his cigar, and he'd wave at everybody and say, "You're all doing a wonderful job." It was a bit like Grace Brothers, you know. And then out would come the champagne. There was a real sense of showbiz.
We were not allowed to do anything that wasn't our designated job, which was to go into that studio, sit there, see what we've got to say, and walk out again. We weren't allowed to switch on lights. We weren't even allowed to move anything. And so they had to have an electrician who sat in the studio simply to put one light switch.
The people that run television were still in bed. They didn't have a clue what was going on the Saturday morning. They assumed they had a children's show that lots of people loved because it got massive ratings, so they didn't bother at all. I'm sure they never watched it. But if they watched it, they'd have gone, "Oh my goodness, what's going on here?"
And we blagged Trevor McDonald into coming on Terzza and surprising Lenny Henry, because Lenny used to do this character called "I'm Trevor McDonald." And we thought, wouldn't it be a jolly whiz if we could get the real Trevor McDonald? And I put him up in the Holiday Inn next door. And I just remember him smuggling in with a blanket over his head so that nobody would see him. And this wonderful voice, even then, coming out from under the blanket going, "Do you know, Chris, this really is most undignified." And I just remember as we snuck in through the door.
I said to this bloke, "What do you do for a living?" He said, "I've been unemployed 2 years." I said, "Smashing." And if looks could have killed, I mean, I was horrendous.
I was supposed to be dressed like Adrian Headley in sort of baggy overalls, but we sort of changed that, and somehow I ended up in a skin-tight silver suit with these boots which came from a sex shop in London, and they were on about 6.5-inch heels. I never really thought this was very appropriate for children.
Spike Milligan walks across camera, turns back and puts a custard pie in my face. How many of you out there can say, "You were flammed by Spike Milligan"? I can.
Jonathan Ross asked me a while back, he said, "Do you think OTT was ahead of its time, or do you think it was crap?" And I said, "I think it was crap ahead of its time." I mean, it kind of was. It was just, I mean, nowadays, nobody would turn a hair at OTT at all.
We're working in large premises, 3 large sound studios, which were going absolutely non-stop. All the big shows were there, Crossroads, all the big game shows were being produced there, and there were over 1,000 people working on this site, and it was very, very exciting.
There was a real sense of showbiz. And also when I was doing the shows and in makeup with Annie, on a Thursday or all through the week, we'd have Crossroads people in. There'd be Noel Gordon sitting there. She only had 1 chair and 1 makeup artist. And then there'd be all the other lovely people off the cast as well. Jane Rossington, Ronnie, Sue Lloyd, the whole lot.
And then later on, of course, when you were getting golden shot there, you'd go into makeup, you'd be sitting next to various celebrities. And so the place was buzzing.
I tried it out and it clicked. And in fact, if I didn't do it, people would come and said, why didn't you say Keaton Field? I mean, they almost got addicted to the old Keaton Field.
And he said, we're going to need some wigs. Have you got some wigs? And they went, wigs? He said, well, you must have some wigs. You're a makeup department. He said, well, yes, I think we have. And they were literally throwing curtain doors open and hunting around, because they used to do everything to order. If you said we want so-and-so in a wig, they would get a wig.
When we were told we were doing Spreading Image, we went down to meet the puppeteers and everything else. And there they are, camping around in front of a camera, no bigger than that, doing that and that. And I'm saying, this is a waste of bloody time. This is not doing anything for anybody. I'm sorry, you must hang on until we get a set and know where you are and what you're behind and how we're masking you. They were just being silly. I'm sorry. To remember all that was with.
They had spent 3 weeks
just
rehearsing
doing
one
bugger all
sketch.
nothing, and it was ludicrous.
We used to write Tiswas in the ATV bar and a club called the Gary Owen down the road. And those were our sort of main creative areas, you know. The bar, God, the thousands of hours of my life I spent crawling on all fours around that bar going, here's the script for tomorrow, everybody. With Frank Carson in my head. Hey, the cracker! Can't wait to tell that one! That's going to be marvellous, that! Upside down. Marvellous.
So we've got this guy who's like this, and the security man's out. Get your head out of shot. Get under the table. Now shove your hand up his jacket and straighten his head. So we've got this security man under the desk, straightening this poor sod's head. Now he said, I'll never forget. I took it. Just let me get this one shot, then you can go. If in fact you can walk. He said, just try and give us a smile. And then I can use the smile on the edit.
Because Tarrant, of course, you wouldn't believe it, he was hired to be a journalist, a reporter. But very quickly, the editor of the time decided that Chris wasn't really the man to sit there and read the news. So they would send him out on anything and everything that was going to be offbeat, I suppose.
I joined from what was then BBC Radio Birmingham, and I heard there was a job going, and I literally knocked on the editor's door and said, I'm your man. And in those days it was as easy as that, well, sort of easy.
Really, so many things started to happen. There's this, is there an underground feeling that they're trying to get rid of the show? There was always that. And when, I don't know what Nolly did, whether she upset people, but she suddenly was sacked.
Mike was very much, when I met Mike, he was exactly as he was on air, of course, you know, very dapper, very, very smooth, suave, sophisticated, very polite. Mike was always very kind to me. He'd obviously seen announcers come and go. He lasted the whole, the whole length of the time from ATV onwards.
I joined at the same time as Hilary Holden, and get this, we both started on 4 weekly contracts, so we knew we got 4 weeks' work, and that was it. And we had no further guarantee. And in fact, at the time, they said, whichever of you is best at the end of it gets the job, the other one gets duffed. Are you allowed to do that now? I don't think so.
And we had a window through to the gallery where the director sat next door, so we could see them, and 2 cameras at the most. Most of the time it was just one. And where the camera was, it was literally the desk was here, and we sat behind, and there were like all the bits and bobs on the wall there. It was really small. Not as small as the broom cupboard, but very small.
All the things that used to happen in this small space, actually. I mean, they used to be swarming with kids and boxing kangaroos and elephants weeing in the corner and custard pies and buckets. And, you know, the news the rest of the week.
It was a great company. It was a terrific company to work for. It gave me a lot of opportunities. The actual end of it was swift.
And then it settled down to Central, but very quickly became obvious this was a business, a big business, not a television business, as opposed to the razzmatazz that ATV brought and the Grade family brought to the proceedings.